Welcome to channel Samson Strength. I'm Samson. If you haven't seen my previous video about fat, I'll link to that below. One of the take-home points was that your body doesn't prefer to utilize fat stores for fuel. It'll use glycogen and carbs first before it uses any kind of fat, which makes getting rid of stored body fat tricky, kind of like an ongoing biohack. The human body actually evolved during a period of economic scarcity, meaning that it is actually designed to be good at storing and keeping fat, unlike Neanderthals, who are good at storing muscle and not very good at accumulating fat. And of course, they died off during those periods of economic scarcity. So this video is a toolbox for your bod, twofer, if you will. I want to talk about medium chain triglycerides, or MCTs, and also a note on skepticism. So MCTs are fats that can be used sort of as a secret weapon against this fat burning problem, because it's an exception to this fat last rule. So your body will use MCTs even before it uses glycogen. So regularly consuming MCTs gives your body practice at burning fat and makes it easier to get to those fat stores. They're also great to use when training on a low-carb diet. So it's a fat that acts like a carb, which is very cool, and there's a lot of research to back this up. Before I get to that, a note on skepticism. There's no such thing as settled science, and anybody who says that is not a scientist. Science, by definition, is the constant questioning and challenging of theories. Okay? Things are changing all the time. Everything I say could be completely wrong, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I read a lot of research, but not all of it, and the research is constantly evolving. So I want to be criticized and judged, and I encourage everybody to check out what I have to say and let me know if I'm wrong. And this video is going to serve as sort of a personal example of how my thinking might evolve on a specific issue. But back to MCTs. Dr. Marcia Aquila and Professor Mandarim, he's the head of his research department at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. They do a lot of work on MCTs and metabolic conditions and health. And they're kind enough to comment on my work as well, so I really appreciate that. So they did some research. They published a study in 2017. I'll cite to that below as well, where they fed mice either a high-fat diet consisting of MCTs, and a low-fat control group. Now, the fat groups gained mass, but the MCT group showed reduced fat accumulation and lower insulin resistance. Now, there was some additional lipid accumulation, which is a direction for further research to see how that might affect long-term health. But switching to MCTs by itself reduced fat and created a better fat-burning environment in general, namely increasing insulin sensitivity, which is very important. We'll talk more about that when we look at carbohydrates. So this is where coconut oil comes in, which contains 50% MCTs, and it has a high smoke point, meaning it's really good for cooking. And I used it for a long time. I buy it in bulk. You want the extra virgin because that means it was exposed to less heat during processing. So for a long time, I cooked with it. It works. Sometimes I'll even supplement with it. There's a bunch of other awesome stuff said about coconut oil. It increases testosterone, improves immune function, and sexual health. So for years, it was touted as kind of a panacea. But then I read an article that suggested we shouldn't be using it at all because it could increase risk for heart disease and heart attack. So I asked Dr. Marcia Aquila again about that, and she explained that coconut oil is made up not just of MCTs, which are the caprylic and capric fatty acids, but also myristic acid and other saturated fats, which can increase total cholesterol and LDL. So while it provides all the awesome benefits of MCTs, there's other stuff that increases cholesterol. So at this point, I'm thinking I should avoid or limit the use of coconut oil. Maybe go back to using just extra virgin olive oil, which is another one of my go-to oils for cooking. But then I came across an article by Dr. Dwight Lundell. I'll put a link to that below as well. He's a highly regarded heart surgeon. He's performed over 5,000 open heart surgeries. So he's looked into tens of thousands of damaged and diseased arteries over the years. And he challenged much of the medical establishment's opinion and practice, which is built on this idea that heart disease results from elevated blood cholesterol. And doctors around the world, of course, prescribe cholesterol-lowering medications and propose a diet that restricts fat intake, very common medical advice. And if doctors deviate from these recommendations, a lot of times that's considered heresy in the medical community and could even be considered malpractice. But Dr. Lundell suggests that this advice just isn't working. In fact, he says, and I quote, "These recommendations are no longer scientifically valid or morally defensible," end quote. Extremely strong words from the doctor. So he suggests we're seeing a paradigm shift based on recent discovery that inflammation in the artery wall is the real cause of heart disease and should lead to a change in how chronic ailments are treated. He also concludes that, quote, "The long-term established dietary recommendations have created epidemics of obesity and diabetes, the consequences of which dwarf any historical plague in terms of mortality, human suffering, and dire economic consequences," end quote. Despite reduced fat diets and expensive statin medications, more Americans are going to die this year of heart disease than ever before. Dr. Lundell's opinion is, quote, "Without inflammation present in the body, there is no way that cholesterol would accumulate in the wall of the blood vessel and cause heart disease and strokes. Cholesterol would move freely through the body as nature intended. Inflammation causes cholesterol to become trapped," end quote. So it's not the cholesterol. Inflammation is a natural biological defense. Our bodies need to have that tool, as well as to be able to reduce inflammation. So in my last video, I mentioned the ideal dietary fat ratio is about 4-to-1. Omega-6, which are the inflammatory fats, to omega-3 anti-inflammatory fats. So if we're getting 20-to-1, 5 times more omega-6 to omega-3 than we should, and chronically exposing our bodies to toxins and foods that we were never designed to process, we end up with chronic inflammation, which is extremely harmful and is the result, according to Dr. Lundell, of following the mainstream diet recommendation that is low in fat and high in carbohydrates. In other words, focusing on cholesterol ignores the underlying question of why cholesterol is able to build up in the first place. The inflammation is caused by an overload of simple carbs, an excess of omega-6 fats, both of which are plentiful in today's processed foods, which also spike your blood sugar. So if you do that repeatedly, day in and day out, it's like taking sandpaper to the inside of your blood vessels, which creates a rough surface that can catch cholesterol and lead it to build up. So, and this causes a lot of chronic conditions. Even Alzheimer's disease can be traced back to this. So what do we do about it? Well, here, Dr. Lundell and I completely agree. We should choose foods closer to their natural state. More protein, carbohydrates should be complex, and we should reduce or eliminate fats that are high in omega-6 and the processed foods that are made with these fats. So olive oil or butter, better than corn or vegetable oil. I stay away from that stuff. Animal fat actually contains less than 20% of omega-6 fats and are better than oils labeled healthy polyunsaturated. In the opinion of this doctor, the diet that I've been consuming for nearly 2 decades, being a fitness guy, and the diet that I recommend to my clients should help keep arteries nice and smooth, meaning that even if my cholesterol is elevated, it won't put me at any increased risk for heart disease, notwithstanding, genetics and other lifestyle choices. But, go back to the olive oil. It has me questioning that again, my use for cooking and supplementation. Now, I don't think anything is a panacea. But if we all reduced or removed processed foods from our diets, we would be a lot healthier. But now I don't think I need to avoid coconut oil. However, as a skeptic, new research or a conversation with somebody like Dr. Ackwell or Professor Mandarin, and maybe they'll comment on this video, for example, very well might have me rethinking this issue yet again. So Until then, I'm going to recognize the unintended consequences of the industrialization of our food supply, focus on eating the kinds of foods available in Old Testament times. Thank you for watching. I'm Samson, reminding you, please be skeptical. Never stop becoming a better person by absorbing new knowledge and considering new arguments.